Good afternoon, everyone. The topic of my thesis is performance evaluation of AODV and OLSR under mobility under guidance of Professor Zhang. There has been a lot of research going on routing protocols for MANETs, and AODV and OLSR are the most popular among the research community so far. But there is not much done in to evaluate the performance of these routing protocols in real life situations. So we thought we'll probably use the Orbit testbed to test the performance of these protocols under the real life situations. The outline of presentation is, I'll first give a little introduction about what MANETs are, what are the routing challenges that are encountered in MANETs, and then we'll give a little bit introduction about how AODV and OLSR works and what is the routing mechanism. Then after that we did some baseline experiments to evaluate the performance of these protocols so that we get a little bit accustomed about the routing mechanism and get used to how the Orbit setup is used and customize the Orbit test bed according to our experimental needs. Then we will define the mobility models, and in general I will talk about reference point group mobility model that we used for our evaluation. Then we will talk about in detail how I emulated mobility on the Orbit static nodes. After that, we will present the results of the mobility experiments, followed by conclusion and future work. Now, what are MANETs? These are ad hoc networks which are rapidly deployable, self-configurable and self-organizing networks of mobile nodes. There is no need for infrastructure or their infrastructure rest, because the nodes themselves act as a router as well as host. Since the nodes are mobile, therefore the topologies keep on changing and the nodes keep on coming going out of transmission range, resulting in highly dynamic environment. The communication can be peer-to-peer or multi-hop. Communication can be multi-hop in scenarios where the destination is not transmission range of the source node, and there is no need for central administration since the mobile nodes themselves act as router as well as hosts. Now, what are the various application scenarios where MANETs can be used? The original motivation behind MANETs was military applications. For example, a group of soldiers working in a battlefield, moving towards a specified target and trying to achieve a common goal. They can also be used to deploy in remote areas where we don't want to employ expensive infrastructure. They are very useful in disaster and relief fire rescue operations because of their rapid deployment, and they can also be useful in the office environment where there is a need of an unplanned meeting, and it can be helpful in interpersonal communications. Now, why routing is a challenge? Since it is highly mobile, it results in highly dynamic topologies, and there is a need that the routing protocol should also be dynamic enough so that it can adapt to those changes in the topology. There is a lot of processing on the node end because it acts as a router as well as host. The node, because of the node's mobility, there is a high probability that there will be a failure of link because of the frequent route changes. The basic characteristics of MANET, which is self-organization and self-configuration, makes it mandatory for the routing protocol also to be self-organizable and self-configurable. Since the nodes rely on batteries, there is a need that all the routing changes or the routing population of the routing tables should consider conservation of energy. Now, why there is a need for a different class altogether for ad hoc routing protocols? The traditional IP protocols that are available, like distance vector or link state, these cannot be used in the MANET because wireless links have very limited capacity, and there is a lot of message complexity that is involved in the IP routing protocols, but we don't want to have that much message complexity for ad hoc routing protocols. Now, depending upon the network structure, they can be divided into flat routing, hierarchical routing and geographic position assisted routing, and depending upon how the routing mechanism is implemented, they can be either proactive or reactive. And the examples for proactive are OLSR and AODV, and since these are the two most important routing protocols among the research community, so the study is basically concentrated on these two protocols. We'll define how these two routing mechanisms differ in a way. In on-demand routing protocols, the routes are created on fly, which means that routes are only created when the source has data to be sent. Whereas in the proactive routing protocols, all the sources have the routes to all the destinations in the network, irrespective whether it has the data to send to the destination or not. Since the routes are created on fly in the on-demand, there is a delay in establishing routes. On the other hand, in the proactive, there is no delay in establishing communication because the routes are already present in the routing table. In on-demand, there is a less routing overhead as comparison to the proactive because the control messages are only exchanged when the source node has the data that is to be sent to the destinations. Now, AODV is ad hoc on-demand distance vector routing protocol. And the basic mechanism behind AODV is it's a distance vector, and the classic problem of the distance vector routing protocol is count to infinity problem, which is overcome here in the AODV by the use of the distance sequence number. AODV uses three types of control messages to communicate about the establishment of routes, which are route request, route reply, and route error. The basic operation of AODV can be divided into three phases, which is route discovery. In route discovery, whenever the node has the data to be sent to the destination, it sends route request messages in the network and wait for the route reply messages. As soon as it gets the route reply messages, the connection is established and the data is sent. In the route maintenance, whenever there is a loss of link in the active route, the node informs the nodes in the active route by sending the route error messages, and hello messages are basically are only sent by the nodes which are involved in the active route, and they just keep on sending the hello messages periodically to tell the nodes in the active route that we are present, and if a node does not receive a hello message within a specified interval of time, it concludes that the link is lost and it initiates the route maintenance phase, which is by sending the route error messages. I have a couple more slides about the detailed mechanism of AODV. If you want, I can go through that, or I'll just skip to the OLSR introduction.
We've all heard AODV
and OLSR. Okay. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about OLSR. And OLSR is optimized link state routing, and it's a proactive table-driven routing. Since the control messages are exchanged all the time, so there can be a lot of flooding of control messages, which is controlled in OLSR by the use of multi-point relay nodes. And OLSR operation can also be divided into three phases, which is neighbor or link sensing with the help of hello messages, and then second is efficient control flooding using the MPR nodes, and the third phase is optimal path calculation based on the information received from the MPR nodes. Okay. Before we conducted the mobility experiments, we wanted to have a basic understanding of how AODV and OLSR works, and what is the orbit test bed, and how can we customize the test bed according to the experimental requirements. So we did very baseline experiments with 2 to 5 hop topology, linear topology. The performance metrics that we observed were aggregate and average throughput and protocol overhead. The parameters varied for these baseline experiments were offered load. Offered load was varied from 5 to 20 Mbps in the steps of 5 Mbps. Then we varied the hop count from 2 to 5 hop count as well as packet size. Apart from the linear topology experiments, we also did a complex topology with 10 nodes and 3 concurrent flows. And in order to understand how a protocol would respond if a node which is previously in the transmission range goes out of the transmission range and keep on doing the same thing, how the protocol would respond, and whether it would repopulate its routing table depending upon the neighboring situations. The experimental setup for the baseline experiments were, we used 802.11a on channel 48. Physical layer rate for all the experiments was 36 Mbps, and the offered load was kept 20 Mbps. The traffic generator we used was IPERF, constant UDP traffic. Since the orbit nodes are in the single collision domain, so to develop the multi-hop topologies, we used MACL, which is a software-based filter which filters out the packets at MAC layer. And the protocol implementations that we used for AODV and OLSR are, the version numbers are 0.9.5 and 0.4.1. We started our experiments with the linear 2-hop topology. As you can see, node 7-8 should not hear node 1-8 to make it a 2-hop topology. So we entered the MAC address of node 1-8 into node 7-8 MAC filtering list, and vice versa for node 1-8. We started our experiments with the unsaturated link state condition and then tried to saturate the link state so that we can see how the protocol's throughput is. These are the results when the offered load was 5 Mbps and 10 Mbps. You can see from the graph that the performance was almost similar for AODV as well as for OLSR, except occasional drop for AODV. Whereas in the saturated links test for 15 and 20 Mbps, you can see for the 20 Mbps offered load, the OLSR completely lost connections for more than couple of seconds as comparison to AODV. It's not able to establish routes, OLSR, and since AODV is more about prioritizing the control packets, so it was able to sustain that offered load. Then the basic objective for varying the packet size was to find out if there is a correlation between packet size and performance. The topology for this experiment was same linear 2-hop topology. We varied the packet size from 256, 512 and 1024 bytes, and all other experiment parameters we kept same as before. As you can see that both the protocols performed in a very similar manner, and there was a comparable increment in the throughput as the packet size was increased, which shows that control packets require same channel arbitration as that of data packets, irrespective of whatever the size of data packet was. Topology was linear 2-hop topology. That's only with 3 nodes, yes. Then we wanted to find out how a protocol behave if the number of hop count is increased in its active route, and want to also measure the protocol overhead as the number of hops is increased. For measuring the protocol overhead, we used a separate node called packet sniffer that sniffed packets on channel 48. On all the packets that were sniffed using packet sniffer, they were analyzed using Wireshark protocol analyzer. The results for when we varied the hop count, as you can see that the throughput scales down as the number of nodes goes up or the number of hops goes up, and by adding number of hops to the active route, the overhead per flow is increased, and that's the reason for a deteriorated performance. And one more observation was that AODV, the throughput for the AODV decrease at a much faster rate as comparison to OLSR as the hop count is increased. These are the results for protocol overhead as the hop count was varied, and you can see that the protocol overhead for AODV is much more than OLSR, although it's very intuitive that for the ad hoc for the on-demand protocols, the protocol overhead should be low, but for our experimental results show the other way around, because AODV tries to prioritize the control messages over data packets, and this is the reason there is the difference between the protocol overhead for AODV and OLSR grows on exponentially as the hop count is increased. Then we did a complex topology with 10 nodes with 3 concurrent flows, and the main objective behind this study was to study the interaction between MAC and routing layer. All the parameters were kept same as before, and the offered load per flow was 1 Mbps. this is the observation that we got from the group topology experiment. You can see that as the offered load is increased from 300 kbps to 3 mbps, the mean aggregate throughput for OLSR keeps on growing as the offered load is increased, whereas the observed throughput for AODV tapers off when the offered load is more than 500 kbps, and the reason again is because it tries to prioritize the control packets over data packets, and it keep on dropping the data packets and is not able to establish routes.
How many flows do you have?
3 concurrent flows, and this is the aggregate.
What happened to the rest of the packets? Or you have a sense of where they were lost? Because this is the case where OLSR is improving,
Yes.
but still both of them lose a very high proportion of packets.
Yeah, it was because of the node 1-8. You can see that it's able to
Mostly packet drops at that node.
yes, because that's handling approximately like 2 flows.
So in your opinion, why was OLSR doing well compared to AODV?
Because it already had routes established and it does not need to
So what the difference is? Routing overhead was less.
routing overhead was less, and secondly, it does not prioritize data packets and control packets, where ODV tries to send control packets as comparison to data packets. So when the routes are not established, so it won't send the data packets and keep on dropping, and it will result in a lower throughput. The last in the baseline experiment was route switching experiment. We started with a 3-hop topology with sender node sending the data to the receiver, and tried to introduce a neighboring node by offering it an alternate path, which is a 2-hop path, and wanted to see whether the routing protocol switches to a shorter 2-hop path or not. And the frequency of this variation was 1 second, 5 second, 10 second, 20 second, 30 second, and 60 seconds. We wanted to see at what point which protocol breaks down. I mean, by this I mean that if it breaks down at 5 seconds, suppose if at 5 seconds it's not able to switch to the 2-hop path, or it does not have that much time that it tries to go onto a 2-hop path. So we keep on varying this situation for these 1 to 60 seconds. These were the results that we got from this route switching. You can see for 1 second experiment, neither of the protocols switched the routes, and therefore the performance of both the protocols is almost similar, and the table below shows that the percentage of time the protocols were chose to hop path. For 5 seconds and 10 seconds, AODV never chose the 2-hop shorter path, whereas OLSR chose 37 and 39% of the time, and that's the reason for the excessive path switching. The throughput for the OLSR was less, because it was just keep on switching and not able to complete the flows on time. And for 20 and 30 seconds and 60 seconds, the same observations were taken, that the performance of AODV was consistent all throughout the change, whereas the mean throughput for OLSR was lower because of the excessive path switching. Next, we started the experiments with different mobility models. The mobility models basically define the mobile characteristics of the node movement, and it was very important to select the mobility model which can generate close to real life scenarios. The various mobility models that are available for ad hoc networks were random waypoint, random walk, and reference point group mobility. I'll talk a little bit about random waypoint and random walk, and then go to group mobility, and would talk why we choose group mobility over random waypoint and random walk. Random waypoint is a very simple and elementary model, and the nodes that follow random waypoint chooses their destinations randomly, and they move toward the destination chosen with a constant speed, and the speed has a uniform distribution between 0 and Vmax. The only difference between random waypoint and random walk is the speed the predefined speed is between the predefined ranges, which is between Vmin and Vmax, and the direction of motion is also uniformly distributed between 0 and 2 pi. And the problems with these two models is, because of their simplicity, they are not able to generate real life situations, and they do not establish a correlation between the new time intervals and previous time intervals, and they can also lead to unrealistic movements like sudden stops or sharp turns. And we thought that it would be more appropriate to study a group mobility model, because there can be situations in ad hoc networks where we want the group of nodes to move together, for example in fire rescue operations or in military maneuvers. So RPGM was the most appropriate model to study the group mobility. This model represents the motion of group of nodes as well as the motion of individual nodes within the group. The group is comprised of a number of nodes and a logic and a center of the group. The group center can be either the logical center or it can be the leader of the group. For our experiments, we chose the center to be the leader of the group, and the group movement is defined by the path traveled by the leader of the group, and all the other nodes follow the path that the group takes depending upon what the random motion we defined for individual nodes. This slide defines about the group leader movement. We define a general motion, the model defines a general motion vector called V group T, which represents the motion of the group leader as well as for the whole group. And each member deviates from this general motion vector by some degree. It can be either chosen randomly or it can be designed for predefined paths. We designed it for the predefined paths and defined the trajectory for the path that the group followed. For the individual node movement, is given by the equation which is VIT is equal to V group T plus random motion. V group T is the general motion vector of the group, and RM is the random vector that a node deviates from its reference point, and random motion vector is an IID process with uniform distribution between 0 and Rmax, and Rmax is the distance maximum allowed distance deviation, and direction of deviation is uniformly distributed between 0 and 2 pi. This is an example that a group of nodes take using the RPGM. You can see there are the motion at the positions at time t equal to t0 and positions at time t equal to t plus delta t. As the leader moves from one time position to another time position, the members also follow the same trajectory and their motion is in sync with the that of the leader. But if we add the random motion vector, it leads to the different positions within the predefined neighborhood, and these two time positions are called the checkpoints in the model. And if we keep on doing the same thing along the whole trajectory that the group follows, it leads to a checkpoint generation, and which is a main feature of RPGM, that we can have a very general and flexible framework and define any trajectory that the group can follow. The main features of RPGM were it can generate very realistic mobility patterns, it provides a general and flexible framework, and checkpoint generation allows a better control over the trajectory of the path. The usage scenarios for RPGM is military maneuver, two-level mobility model, in a sense that there can be a scenario where infantry and helicopters are working together. So it comprises of slow moving nodes and fast moving nodes. And last is road network mobility. A roadmap can be converted into an RPGM model. So the major challenges that we faced while doing the experiments for mobility were how to emulate mobility on static orbit nodes. One of the other challenge was the nodes were in single collision domain, so we used Mach layer filtering for to avoid that problem. And the solution for the static nodes to make mobility possible on the nodes there were two ways we could do that. We could achieve that. First method was by using the additive white Gaussian noise generator using the orbit testbed. And mobility can be emulated by controlling the amount of noise that can be injected, giving it effect like if we inject more noise, that means the nodes are moving apart from each other, and if we inject less amount of noise, that means the nodes are moving close to each other. And the other method was by changing the link PER or packet error rate as the node moves away or come closer to each other. When the node moves away from each other, that means the PER is increasing, and if the node moves comes closer to each other, that means the PER is decreasing. For this second method, we wanted a very general framework to map distances to the PER, and then we could use MACL to change those PERs as the nodes move as per the mobility model. We chose the second method. The reason is because MACL filter can be used to change the PER, which is a more reliable technique as comparison to injecting noise into the system. And second was there was a difficulty in injecting noise on a per link basis because testbed has 4 antennas on 4 corners of the testbed, and it introduced the noise on the system level basis and not on a link basis. And lastly, it offers much better control over experimental setup if you want to change the PER very frequently as comparison to changing the noise. Before we came up with this simulation model, I tried to get the relationship between distance and PER by taking the 2 laptops in the field and did some measurements, but those graphs were not useful enough that we could use those graphs for the emulation. So we came up with a very separate and theoretical model, which was the step for the getting the model was first selecting the path propagation model, then deriving a relationship between distance and path loss or SNR, then in turn getting a relation between SNR and PER, and taking all the above relations, then derive a relation between distance and PER. The path propagation model that we chose was a log distance path loss model. It's a simplistic model, and it indicates that the average received signal power decreases logarithmically with the distance. The parameters in the equation can be either find out by measurements, but we chose these parameters from the reference mentioned below. The second step was to define the relationship between distance and path loss. The equation which is mentioned in the first point is very well known equation, and since we chose 8.11a for our experiments, the transmitted power we kept was 200 megawatts, and with little manipulation in the first equation we got the relation between distance and path loss. And to get the relation between PER and SNR, we got that relation by getting the simulation results from the reference that I mentioned before. The physical error simulation results were used for deriving this relation, and the details for the model are they used incisive SPW 8.11a model, and the channel was additive white Gaussian noise. The fading effect was included using additional loss factor. The packet size was kept at 1500 bytes for 36 Mbps, and all these parameters exactly match our experimental requirements, so we went for this relationship. The relation between SNR and PER were obtained from that reference, and we mapped those relationship to the distance. As you can see that we have only the values up till 371 meters and 316 meters, and to get the values below 316 meters and above 371 meters we use linear regression, which is the curve fitting graph that you can see. The R square value for the linear regression was 0.9822, which is quite high, and the regression analysis statistics show that the coefficients for intercept and slope were very statistically significant. Before we could use the reference point group mobility model, we thought probably it's a better idea to first have a very simple model, which is like we defined a straight line model in which the nodes move in straight line towards a predefined destination. The movement of each and every node was defined at a certain angle instead of just going at 45 degree. The experiments done were discrete in time and they were not continuous, which means if a node is at a coordinate x1 and y1 at t1, it will be at x2 at x2 and y2 coordinate at time t2, and 10 such time positions were taken. Using the straight line mobility, we came up with 2 separate experiments which we call as 30 seconds and 60 seconds, which means that the time it takes for a node to move from one time position to another time position can be varied either to 30 seconds or 60 seconds. And this gives an effect of how fast a node moves towards its predefined destination. This was the topology for the straight line mobility. We used 5 nodes, and the PRs that are mentioned on the link, these are the initial PRs that we started with, and there were 2 concurrent flows. The performance metrics that we measured for straight line mobility were end-to-end throughput and protocol overhead. This is the result for 60 second snapshot. That means the time taken by the node to move from one time position to another time position is 60 seconds. If you ignore first 40 seconds where there is a lot of fluctuations, average throughput for AODV and OLSR was almost similar, which is around 1.9 or 1.90 Mbps. And comparing these results with the static 2-hop topology, the average throughput achieved there was 99% of the offered load, whereas in the straight line mobility, the throughput achieved was 96% of the offered load for AODV and 94% for OLSR. And standard deviation for both the protocols is almost similar. However, if you remove the first 40 seconds as we did for the throughput analysis, the standard deviation for OLSR is approximately 2.5 times that of AODV. And you can see around 1 Mbps aggregate throughput line. OLSR throughput dropped below 1 Mbps about 3% of the time, and the reason for this is since we had 2 concurrent flows with 1 Mbps each, that means one flow was not able to complete during 60 seconds, 120 seconds and 180 seconds, which is incidentally the time when we switched or we changed PERs, because this is a 60 second snapshot duration, whereas no such results were seen for AODV. For 30 seconds snapshot duration, the results were very similar as we obtained before, and the standard deviation of throughput for OLSR was about 2.74 times. Average throughput for both of them was almost similar, with AODV performing slightly better than OLSR. Then we also measured the protocol overhead for both in both the scenarios. From the graph, it can be seen that the protocol overhead is clearly higher for AODV as comparison to OLSR, and if we compare this with the static 2-hop topology, the overhead for AODV is approximately 2.5 times that of OLSR, and the increase in the overhead for OLSR, if we compare in the static and the mobile environment, is much less as comparison to OLSR. And by making the snapshot at 60 seconds and 30 seconds, you can see that AODV's protocol overhead jumped approximately 2.7 times that of obtained in 60 seconds. That means by increasing the speed, AODV sends more control packets, and hence more protocol overhead for the AODV. Then after conducting the straight line mobility experiments we did for the reference group point mobility, we defined these 2 equations to be to define the motion of each member, where V member is the velocity of the member with which it moves, and theta member is the deviation with which it deviates from that of the leader, and V leader is the velocity of the leader, and theta leader is the angle for leader, which is constant for all the experiments. SDR and ADR is the speed deviation ratio and angle deviation ratio, and they are used to control the deviation of the velocity of group members from that of the group leader. The checkpoint file for RPGM was generated using mobility generator for NS2. For RPGM also we did 2 different experiments by varying the SDR and ADR. For the first scenario, SDR and ADR is quite high. That means the nodes are allowed to deviate from the leader more as comparison for the second scenario. From the first graph, you can see that the time we the time snapshots that we took was every 30 seconds, and we took the sample length PER and saw that the change in the PER was much high for 30 seconds time snapshot as comparison to the 5-second snapshot. So that's the reason we call the second case to be pseudo-continuous, because it's more closer to the continuity, whereas we call the first scenario to be discrete. The topology for RPGM was the same as straight line mobility, same 5 set of nodes and same 2 concurrent flows, and all other experiment parameters were also same, 8.11a wireless interface and channel 48 and other parameters. These are the results for RPGM on the discrete time snapshot, that is when the ADR and SDR are quite high, that means the nodes are allowed to move, nodes are allowed to deviate much more as comparison to the continuous scenario. If we ignore first 40 seconds as we did in the straight line mobility to be consistent with our analysis, AODV has higher throughput as compared to that of OLSR, and the standard deviation for AODV is 26% lower than that of OLSR. From the graph also it can be seen that around 80 seconds OLSR has more dead links as comparison to AODV, and one more interesting point in this was around 1 Mbps in the graph. OLSR, the percentage of time that OLSR was at 1 Mbps throughput was 12%, whereas AODV was only 5%, which implies that at least one flow was down during those time snapshots. For the pseudo-continuous scenario, you can see there is a lot of variation, because after every 5 seconds the PER was changed for both the protocols. And AODV, if we take the mean throughput for a whole of the experiment, AODV has 11% lower throughput as comparison to OLSR. And if we compare these results with the straight line mobility, the throughput achieved here in RPGM experiments is much lower as comparison to the straight line mobility. And the standard deviation for AODV is 12% higher than OLSR, and there is a lot of fluctuations in the throughput. And again, if you see around 1 Mbps line, AODV had one flow totally cut off, because there are 2 flows with 1 Mbps, and if the throughput is 1 Mbps, which means that there was one flow which was completely down, and there were less dead links for OLSR as compared to AODV. If you compare the protocol overhead into both the scenarios, you can see that protocol overhead as predicted for AODV was high in both the scenarios as comparison to OLSR. And if we compare these protocol overhead values with the static environment, protocol overhead for AODV was more than 6 times that in the mobile environment, and for OLSR it was 10 times higher in the mobile environment as comparison to the static environment. So to summarize the results for the RPGM model, in the discrete case scenario, AODV performed marginally better as comparison to OLSR, whereas OLSR performed better in terms of throughput and standard deviation for pseudo-continuous. The conclusions for static topologies, obviously OLSR outperformed AODV in all respect except in the unsaturated link test. It was intuitive that on-demand protocol should have lower throughput, lower overhead as comparison to table-driven, but our experimental results showed the other way around. And with the increase in hop count for active route, the mean throughput for OLSR was again higher as compared to AODV, because AODV was not able to maintain the links for higher hop count. The conclusions for the mobile environment are for straight line mobility, AODV performed marginally better than OLSR, but for RPGM, OLSR performed better than AODV in terms of either throughput or standard deviation. It was seen in general that if the topology is changed less frequently, as in if the PER is changed less frequently, as in after every 30 seconds or 60 seconds, AODV performed better than OLSR. However, if the topology was changed more frequently,
for the static, OLSR was better.
Started for OLSR bus better, yes. This is for the mobile environment.
Okay, so static OSR is better than mobile, but if the change is more frequent,
OLSR is better.
then then if it's mobile and the change is less frequent, AODV is better. That sounds
It's marginally better. It's not exactly that there's a huge difference. There is a like 0.4 or 0.5 Mbps difference. It's
Okay.
not very
Yes,
countable.
Since the trend is not too continuous.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if the topology changes more frequently, like in the pseudo-continuous scenario, OLSR performed better. The main conclusion was mobility does affect the performance of these routing protocols, and it also depends upon what mobility model you choose and how the parameters for those mobility models are set. Either of the protocol can perform better, and definitely there is a considerable cost associated with the mobility. Both the protocols showed decrease in throughput. There was a higher standard deviation, there were more dead links and high protocol overhead in the mobile environment as comparison to their respective static environment. In this study we did the intra-group interaction, but the study can be extended to have more than one group and to see how the protocols performed for the inter-group interaction. And other mobility models can also be explored like Freeway and Manhattan. We studied the proactive and reactive protocols. We can also include the hybrid routing protocols like ZRP to have a better comparison how the hybrid protocols would behave in all these scenarios. Thank you.
So
It's